Hello everyone and welcome. Let me just make sure that everything is working where it needs to be working. I can see myself on YouTube. Hello everyone on YouTube. I can see myself on Facebook. That's good news as well. And I can see myself on my website Cram the Exam as well. So it looks like all of the streaming is working. So if you have any problems with the stream, if you can't hear me, if I'm just moving my mouth and you can't hear anything at all, then please let me know through a chat somewhere on Cram the Exam Facebook or on YouTube, and I will do my best to correct any technical problems there are. So let's begin today. Today we're going to have a look at Ready for First. We're going to have a look at the grammar and vocabulary questions in Unit 1. There aren't that many grammar and vocabulary questions in Unit 1. The good thing about Ready for First, why I'm a big fan of the book, is because of the amount of exam content in the book. There is more exam content in Ready for First than in any of the other books, in my opinion. That doesn't necessarily make it the best, but it does make it probably the best course book for the amount of exam resources. Now, of course, the exam resources are really, really good if someone is giving you feedback, if you've got access to an answer key. And of course, you can have all of that on my website at cramtheexam.com, where I give you all of the answers to all of the questions, and for your writing, I'll give you feedback as well. Okay, so let's get on with the exercises, and let's have a look at the first couple of questions. Now, the first question isn't really a question, so I'll give you this one for free. Just like I was saying yesterday in when I was looking at Gold First, the importance of learning collocations. Excuse me. So it's not just a question of learning a noun and learning an adjective. It's a question of learning which adjective goes with which noun, which adverb goes with which adjective, which adverb goes with which verb, how you form collocations. This should be part of your learning process. And when you learn the collocation together, you'll develop your fluency, assuming you use that vocabulary, you'll develop your fluency a little bit better, because one thing that stands out when it comes to making mistakes in your speaking and in your writing is when you misuse a collocation, when you create an unnormal or an unnatural collocation, and then the examiner or the listener is then just left scratching their head a little bit, thinking something's not quite right there. But if it's possible to learn the collocation together, then you'll be one step ahead. It'll add a little bit of fluency to your writing. And of course, collocations are a huge part of the use of English question 1, multiple choice close, and it's also an important part of the part 4, and it's an important part, as I said, of your writing and of your speaking exam as well. So I just wanted to show you this. You've got all of these verbs. Let me just get my pen out. You've got all of these. You've got these 3 verbs: have, live, lead, which can use all of these adjectives which work with this noun. Now, I know that's going to make learning this a little bit difficult, but you don't normally see all of these options when you come across interesting vocabulary. Normally you come across one collocation, so you can record it one collocation at a time. You don't have to do this exercise, just to show you the range of collocations you might have. But so you can use one verb with one adjective and a noun. So have an alternative lifestyle, lead a comfortable lifestyle, live an exciting lifestyle. You could say all of these things. In fact, you could join 2 of these adjectives together. So you can have a chaotic, stressful lifestyle. Although you've got to be a little bit careful with this, because you can't say, for example, an exciting, simple lifestyle. That contextually doesn't make that much sense. Or similarly, if you have a chaotic, sedentary lifestyle, then that also doesn't make that much sense. So context is important when you're creating these collocations. Okie dokie. So let's get on with one of the exercises. In fact, there's 2 exercises here. You're really getting good use out of me here on YouTube and on Facebook. So let's have a look at these. Question number 2, which was on page, looking down on my book here as we're going through this. It was on page 10. Question 2, questions 1 to 6, decided the position of the adverb is possible. If it's not possible, correct the sentence. I rarely go out on weekday evenings. Absolutely fine, no problems there. Just before I go any further, I just want to say and highlight that at the back of the book, there is a grammar reference. So to a lot of you, this might be new information, but I will be referring to the grammar reference section at the back of the book. It's full of interesting information. If you've got a question and you're self-studying at home, the chances are it's going to be in the grammar reference, and that is the case with these exercises as well. So I rarely go out on weekday evenings. Absolutely fine. Rarely goes before the verb or the phrasal verb that you're trying to use, and generally speaking, if you keep the adverb as close to the verb as possible, it will be okay, but we will see some exceptions. So I have usually my dinner in front of the television. Although the adverb and the verb are close together, the adverb in this case should be before the verb. So I usually have my dinner in front of the television. We can also put usually at the beginning, usually, comma, I have my dinner in front of the television. I have my dinner in front of the television, usually. So usually is quite flexible in this respect. Never I spend more than 10 minutes doing my English homework. Now, some adverbs have to go in the right place, and in this case, it's got to go between I and spend. It's got to go between you and the verb. So I never spend more than 10 minutes doing my English homework. But how can we get this to work? We can get this to work by using emphatic do. So for example, I'm trying to write very badly here with the cursor. You can say, never do I spend more than 10 minutes, then you'd have to change the sentence, on my English homework. So you can, and I'm going to try and do my best to write in the preposition here, never do I spend more than 10 minutes on my English homework. So we have got that emphatic do structure that works in this case. Companies are always phoning me in the evening trying to sell me something. I get so annoyed. This is the classic exception with always. Generally, the rule is you use always and it's going to be simple tense. But always plus ing is an expression of annoyance, generally, or surprise, possibly. And here, this is annoyance. Companies are always phoning me. In that case, always has got to be before the present participle, the ing form. Hardly I ever play the computer games. You'll see that there's a commonality here between these 2 negative adverbs. We've got never and hardly, and it's the same rule. I hardly ever play computer games. I prefer reading, so the adverb should be here. But of course, we can do the same escape with this as well. So I hardly do I ever play computer games. I prefer reading. So all we need here is an emphatic do. We don't need to make any changes here. And number 6, it's rare for me to go to bed before midnight, and quite often I'll stay up until 2 in the morning. Nothing wrong with that sentence. Absolutely fine. I guess they're trying to work out is often in the right place. And here it's fine. And quite often, normal standard collocation, not a problem. And if you're going to use quite often, they've got to be together. Now, one thing that's moving on to the next question, which is also on page 10 and which also refers to the grammar information on page 209, I think it's 209, yes it's 209, is how we use used to and would. Now this is in the first unit of Gold First, it's in the first unit of Ready for First, it's in the first unit of First Expert. So in the first units of all of these FCE or first books, you've got these this language of how you talk about past habits, how you use used to and would. And I would say it's in Unit 1 for a good reason, because this is a wonderful language tool which actually shows, if you use it correctly, a wonderful fluency in your writing or in your speaking. Talking about past habits, talking about the past is a nice thing to do. And if you can get the language correct, then it's going to add that fluency to your language. And it's much better than just using the past form all of the time. I did this, I had that, I spoke to. So using used to or would adds a little bit of variety to your language, which is great for speaking and for your writing exam questions. So in the bad old days, my mum had an executive position in a pharmaceutical company. So can we use used to and would? Can we only use used to, or can we use neither used to or would? Here we can use used to. In the bad old days, my mum used to have an executive position in a pharmaceutical company. We can't use would in this case because used to refers to past states, and we can't use would to refer to past states. If you want to find out more about that, then have a look at page 209 in your grammar book. She often worked long hours. She often used to work long hours. She would often work long hours. So here we can use A. Just be careful about how you form what the language pattern is. She would often work. She often used to work. So just be careful for that. And sometimes went away on business trips for 2 or 3 days at a time. Now, used to and would, you talk about habits. If you say sometimes, it's not a habit. So here we can't use either of those two, so the answer is C. Our dear old Gran looked after us. Dear old Gran used to look after us. Our dear old Gran would look after us. So absolutely, all of those are absolutely fine. So we can use A on those occasions, but it wasn't the same as having a mum around. My brother and I didn't like her being away from home. So my brother and I didn't used to, I think that's right, yes, we didn't used to like her being away from home, so we can use like, used to, but we can't use would, and that's because like is a stative verb, and we can't use would with stative verbs. The only person who can misuse, the only thing that can misuse stative verbs are McDonald's with their slogan, I'm loving it, but normal people like us, we can't misuse stative verbs, or rather we shouldn't misuse stative verbs. We never once said anything. We never once said anything. What's happening here? I'm just having a look at my notes here. This isn't a habit. This is a statement of fact. So here we can't use either of those two because this isn't a habit. This is just a reaction within this context. So here we can't use either. We just have to use the past simple because we always thought she was happy in her work. Now, think is a stative verb. We can't use would, but we can use used to because we're talking about past habits or past practices. We always used to think she was happy in her work. Then one day she announced, one day, this is not a habit, it happened once. Then one day she announced, has to be past simple, can't be used with used or would. She was giving up her job to spend more time with her family. We were delighted in the change in lifestyle. Now once again, this continues the context of this one thing happening. So this is not a habit, which means that we can't use used to or would. But I'm not sure about my mum. She often said afterwards that being a full-time mother was harder than being a business executive. So she often used to say, often is enough to suggest a habit or something that happened over and over and over again. So that allows us to use both forms in this case. She often used to say afterwards, she would often say afterwards that being a full-time mother was harder than being a business executive. And there we go. Good. I'm glad that you were watching that. Hi, Eva. I'm glad that you were watching that with me. If you've got any questions at all or anything to do with these two questions that we had a look at, then please leave a comment below and I will get back to you. If you want to see the rest of this lesson, then please join me on cramtheexam.com. Just go along to my website. You'll find a link to join. It's only 30 zloty a month, around about 7 to 8 euros. And for that, you get access to all of my video materials, all of the things that I'm doing here, and you get to send me your writing. I get to, and I'll mark it. I'll do a video response to you, so you get plenty of feedback about how to improve your writing as well. But for now, YouTube and Facebook, I will say goodbye. So let me just wait a few seconds for the video to catch up, and I'll turn off the streams.